I'm Nicky Miklos, and this is the Smart Business Growth Podcast, where we ditch the busy trap and get real about what it takes to drive sustainable sales, lead with clarity, and build a business that's future fit. Let's dive straight into it. Hello, legend, and welcome to Smart Business Growth Podcast. This week with me, Nicky Miklos. As always, I am thrilled, grateful, and super excited to be having this conversation with you. Can you believe that we are already in March? I had a realization that actually this is the last month of the first quarter of the calendar year. This is the last month of Q3 of the financial year. I don't know about you, but I feel like in some ways it's still January, but then in others, it's like we've already had a full year in the last couple of months. And so this time of year, the last quarter of the first quarter of the calendar year, et cetera, in March, is a really good time to pause and reflect on the systems and structure that we have set up in the business, particularly around benchmarks of success or looking at KPIs, key performance indicators. It's really interesting to me because there's a couple of key clients that I'm working with that are in the process of introducing KPIs or benchmarks of success. This isn't new. There's always at some point at least one or two clients that are really revisiting or looking at implementing these structures in place. And if you haven't got KPIs, benchmarks of success in place, then I highly recommend that you listen closely to this episode. If you already do, this could be your reminder to review and check in with, are they actually working? You know, some of the biggest barriers that I see to businesses actually wanting to not just put these things in place, but also measure them and bring some transparency around results. So it could be team dashboards. There's some common barriers that come up around not wanting the team to feel awkward if there's a team dashboard and everybody can see results. Not understanding actually how to put particular benchmarks of success in place or KPIs, you know, when we're looking at a particular type of industry or business. It can take a lot of work. There's a lot behind it. What do we do once they're in? There's a fear around how the team will react. Do they see KPIs as I'm doing bad and I'm going to get into trouble? And all of these things are really, we have to get curious about because they're really indicative of what could be holding your team back from really, truly stepping into a high performance, peak performing team. Let's think about it. Stats are important. Stats are the data that shows the results. Are we moving the dial towards the outcomes and the goals that we want to achieve? Why wouldn't we want individuals within the team to have their own data, their own number to chase? And also, what that gives them is the opportunity to celebrate their success. It actually gives them the opportunity to know and to own what success looks like in their role. This is why it matters so much, because it's not just for the overarching business success, but it's for the individual to have that sense of achievement as well. Now, I can say this, I truly believe this, but oftentimes the culture of the business is saying something different. Again, it's that fear of how will they react if we give them a number to own and hold them to account. So I really appreciate that there's a transition period. If you've gone from really loosey-goosey type of numbers or KPIs, you know, again, a key performance indicator is simply a metric that shows here are the important numbers that will move the dial in our business, that will achieve the overarching. If every individual achieves it, we will get there as a bigger team. I mean, that's all that it is, right? But it is a transition if that hasn't been clear, if people have been let off the hook, if people can just kind of rock up and do whatever they want. So yes, we need to get our head around it. We need to nurture our teams whilst we're actually putting those things in place. Sometimes, as in the case of some of my clients, they'll steer clear from calling it KPIs because it feels too old school or too sales metric-ish, especially if you're not in a sales business. So for them, they might call it a benchmark of success, a boss, or there's other ways that you can bring it in and kind of rebrand it, but we're not changing the core of what it is and what its purpose is and how you're measuring and managing it. We've got to not only think of what are those 3 to 5, no more, 3 solid KPIs up to 5 What are they? How are we rolling it out? How are we giving them the opportunity to be able to meet them? And then having regular catch ups, fortnightly, monthly, if you can, weekly check ins. How are you tracking to your monthly boss or your monthly KPI? How can we support you? What are the barriers and what are the indicators or what's supporting you getting there? So you can help pivot and help them achieve that by the end of the month. If they're not achieving it and they're not achieving it over month on month on month on month, absolutely, that is where performance management can come into place. But if they're achieving it, it's an opportunity to acknowledge the work that they've done. And it feels really bloody good as the individual. It doesn't feel so good when we're not achieving it. So there's a couple of areas that the team can fall into. One, they're fearful because in the past they've had an experience that was not a coaching environment. It wasn't about winning and hitting goals and celebrating successes. It was more of a carrot or a stick scenario. So there can be fear from previous experiences. There could also be fear because deep down, or maybe consciously, they know they're not actually doing the right thing and they're about to be found out. And then there's also just it's kind of like when you first sit in an open office. You know, if you sit in an open office and everyone can hear your phone calls, it's kind of that same feeling when people start to see your stats and see the work that you're doing as well. But trust me when I say transparency is absolutely key in creating that high performance team. And we get used to it, just like we get used to that open floor plan when we're sitting down and people can hear our calls. And so when we're rolling it out, when you're in that transition, you're explaining the why, you're showing the positive side, you're still managing expectations that absolutely, if they're not being met, there'll be further conversations. But that's not the core focus. You're giving a grace period. You're testing the numbers. You're tweaking the numbers. You know, usually it's not, we've nailed it, we roll it out and that's it. You might want to revisit it quarterly. It's an open dialogue with your leadership team and with the team. And where you end up is that you actually start to get a really strong cadence of high performance. People get used to the fact that their stats will be shared on a dashboard or discussed in an open forum. There's acknowledgement and celebration as a team. There's tough conversations sometimes around low performers. But that is needed because if you truly want to hit your overarching bigger goals, these tough conversations need to happen. Oftentimes, businesses realize, oh, okay, things actually aren't working the way that we thought that they were. There's some different behaviors happening or misunderstanding. Sometimes the team think that they're doing things in the way they're meant to, and it can highlight that new systems and processes need to be implemented. It can highlight that additional training and support is needed. And so when we think about this from the point of view of the individual owning a number, that number feeds into the overarching number, the coaching conversations, the development opportunities, the check-ins are somewhat centered around that number. We give people the opportunity to step up. We give them the opportunity to be autonomous and own their contribution to the business. We also create a culture where high performance, good performance is rewarded and there's nowhere to hide. And so that might mean that some people fall by the wayside, but that's okay. Because if they're meant to be in your business, if they're meant to be along for the ride, they eventually, because you've rolled it out in a really effective way, got on board, jumped on board with you, and, they're embracing it. It might take time. It might take 6 months, 9 months, but trust me, it's worth it. You'll have clarity, transparency. You will be able to, as a senior leader, step out of that business, whether it's for a half-day meeting or a conference or a holiday, knowing that everybody knows what they need to do when you're not there. And you're giving them the pathways for the support to get there. I trust this has provoked some thinking. If you don't have KPIs or bosses, benchmarks of success, it's time to start thinking that. And, when I think about the end of the third quarter in the financial year, what a great time to start thinking about this so you can potentially implement some key things ready for the new financial year in July. If you already have this in place, some of you listening, I know you've got great KPIs, you review them quarterly, love it. If you do have them in place, this is just a reminder to continually check in and review. It's never a set and forget. And maybe the numbers that are being driven are great and that's, rocking really nicely. Perhaps it's about how are you supporting your team in hitting those numbers? Do you have a good coaching culture, a good coaching cadence in place to help to continue develop and support your team? Are you focusing more on training? Do you have training? Do you have the balance of training and coaching? What other development opportunities are there? So it's not just about getting the numbers and putting them in place. That's the first step. Then it's about what are the conversations to hit those numbers. And then it's about how do we continue to go above and beyond to support those team members. And we want that above and beyond to actually just become a part of the everyday rhythm of your high-performing business. Reach out to me. Let me know what has come up for you. Is there something that needs to be tweaked, changed, introduced? And I'm really curious to see how this is going to play out in your business over the next 3 to 4 months as we start the run home to the end of financial year 2026. I'm kind of a bit nervous to even say we'll be entering 27, but it's so close, my friends. It's so close. Take it lightly, enjoy, and I'll see you in the next episode.